Hello again, and welcome back to year 5 of the Religious Dedication Initiative. This is week 36. Christos Anesti, Christ is risen. This is day 1. We're continuing to read through the book of Third Kingdoms. Last time, we saw Solomon enter upon his kingship and ask the Lord for wisdom rather than for riches or victories against his enemies. The Lord was pleased with his request and granted him not just wisdom, but also riches and victories and peace. And then, in the latter half of our reading, we saw an example of Solomon's wisdom at work. This time, we will read bits of the following chapters and see how Solomon actually builds the Lord's house in Jerusalem, along with summaries of what we are not reading. So this is going to bring us from chapter 4 through to chapter 8. Now, the first 20 verses of chapter 4 simply list Solomon's officials, and then we will begin actually reading with a beautiful statement of the peace that God has granted to his people. This is verse 20 of chapter 4. Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand by the sea. They ate and drank and were happy. Solomon was sovereign over all the kingdoms, from the Euphrates to the land of the Philistines, even to the border of Egypt. They brought tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life. For he had dominion over all the region west of the Euphrates, from Tifsha to Gaza, over all the kings west of the Euphrates, and he had peace on all sides. During Solomon's lifetime, Judah and Israel lived in safety, from Dan even to Beersheba, all of them under their vines and fig trees. And then, moving forward from verse 26 to the end of chapter 4, we have more descriptions of Solomon's wealth and wisdom, and we see the Queen of Sheba visit. That's important, but we're not going to read it here. In chapter 5, we see King Hiram of Tyre send workers and materials to help Solomon build the temple. We also see Solomon conscript forced labor out of all his dominions. Whether he's conscripting Israelites or not is not explicitly clear, it seems, but it's a little bit sketchy. Chapter 6, though, we see him actually begin to build the temple. So we'll read not a detailed description of the temple, but the first verse of chapter 6 we'll read. In the 480th year after the people of Israel came out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, which is the 2nd month, he began to build the house of the Lord. And then from verse 2 through 10 in chapter 6, we get a detailed description of the temple as Solomon is building it. And then in verse 11, God speaks to Solomon. So, now the word of the Lord came to Solomon, concerning this house which you are building. If you will walk in my statutes and obey my ordinances and keep all my commandments and walk in them, then I will establish my word with you, which I spoke to David your father, and I will dwell among the children of Israel, and I will not forsake my people Israel. And then from verse 14 to verse 36 of chapter 6, we see Solomon furnish the temple, put all of the things inside, and then in verse 37. In the 4th year, the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid in the month of Ziv. And in the 11th year, in the month of Bul, which is the 8th month, the house was finished in all its parts, and according to all its specifications. He was 7 years in building it. Solomon was building his own house 13 years, and he finished his entire house. And then the rest of chapter 7 describes Solomon's houses, yes, and the house he built for his wife, Pharaoh's daughter, and the things that were made by Hiram, the bronze worker, for the temple and for the other houses. And then in chapter 8, we finally get to the dedication of the temple. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the leaders of the fathers' houses of the people of Israel, before King Solomon in Jerusalem, to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion. And all the men of Israel assembled to King Solomon at the feast in the month Ethanim, which is the 7th month. And all the elders of Israel came, and the priests took up the ark. And they brought up the ark of the Lord, the tent of meeting, and all the holy vessels that were in the tent. The priests and the Levites brought them up. And King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel who had assembled before him were with him before the ark, sacrificing so many sheep and oxen that they could not be counted or numbered. Then the priests brought the ark of the covenant of the Lord to its place in the inner sanctuary of the house, in the most holy place, underneath the wings of the cherubim. For the cherubim spread out their wings over the place of the ark, so that the cherubim made a covering above the ark and its poles. And the poles were so long that the ends of the poles were seen from the holy place before the inner sanctuary, but they could not be seen from outside, and they are there to this day. There was nothing in the ark except the 2 tables of stone which Moses put there at Horeb, where the Lord made a covenant with the people of Israel when they came out of the land of Egypt. And when the priests came out of the holy place, a cloud filled the house of the Lord, so that the priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. Then Solomon said, The Lord has set the sun in the heavens, but has said that he would dwell in thick darkness. I have built thee an exalted house, a place for you to dwell in forever. Then the king faced about, and blessed all the assembly of Israel, while all the assembly of Israel stood. And he said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who with his hand has fulfilled what he promised with his mouth to David my father, saying, Since the day that I brought my people Israel out of Egypt, I chose no city in all the tribes of Israel in which to build a house, that my name might be there, but I chose David to be over my people Israel. Now it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. For the Lord said to David my father, Whereas it was in your heart to build a house for my name, you did well that it was in your heart. Nevertheless you shall not build the house, but your son who shall be born to you shall build the house for my name. Now the Lord has fulfilled his promise which he made, for I have risen in the place of David my father, and I sit on the throne of Israel as the Lord promised, and I have built the house for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. And there I have provided a place for the ark, in which is the covenant of the Lord which he made with our fathers, when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. Okay. So, on the one hand, we have seen the promise given, since we first started reading about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, that their descendants would receive the promised land. And during the reign of Solomon, they receive it in full, from the river Euphrates all the way to the river of Egypt, exactly as was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to Moses, and to Joshua, and to all the people of Israel. The promise is fulfilled. They are living in peace. Their enemies are all subdued under them. All the nations that are not actually part of Israel are paying tribute. Everything is good. David was a good king. He repented when he sinned, and now his son Solomon is the king. He's reigning. Everything is great. Things are just going to be happily ever after from now, right? Well, no. And this is basically as good as it's going to get. And indeed, already as Solomon starts talking, we're seeing a great problem. And it's worthwhile to contrast Solomon versus Jesus, because Jesus very seldom actually uses I. He doesn't talk about himself. He'll talk about himself in the third person. The Son of Man must this, the Son of Man must that. He'll tell who he is. But Solomon is like, me, 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 me. This is not good. This is worrisome. This bodes ill. And it's worthwhile actually to read this as, to read Solomon as a kind of Christ, as a kind of anointed one. He is the king. He is anointed. He is reigning. He is establishing a temple. He is establishing worship, but he's doing it in the wrong way. He's doing it with the wrong mindset. He's doing it in order to glorify himself. And what we'll see next time is he's trying to constrain God. He's saying, I built you this house, so make a deal with me. Come into the house and live here forever, and, always be a blessing here. Let this be the place that we come to get your favor again. Which is like, God has already granted them all of his promises to them. Solomon is trying to say, now just leave us the promises and never mind the whole being faithful thing. Just, we come to worship you in the temple and everything is great. And this troubled mindset is going to remain all the way until the time of Christ, preferring the temple to faithfulness. And it's a little bit there even when Solomon is interpreting the fact that God's presence, the theophoric glory cloud, the cloud of the glory of God comes and dwells in the temple. And Solomon interprets it. He says, the Lord has set the sun in the heavens, but he said that he would dwell in thick darkness. So he's identifying this darkness, right? This cloud that comes into the house. And then he says, God said he would dwell in thick darkness, but I have built an exalted house for the darkness that God dwells in. But God dwells in darkness. He dwells in the cloud. He cannot be seen. Solomon is like, but I made you a place, and now I've got you. I put you in a box. But you can't put God in a box. God may condescend to come to us, but you cannot constrain him. And that's the problem with what Solomon is trying to do. And even as he is reaching his peak, he's making a hard left turn into foolishness. And we'll see him go further than that. But for now, ultimately, it is indeed a son of David who will build a house that lasts forever. And that promise that David's son, who shall be born to you, who shall be born to him, shall build the house for the name of the Lord. But that's Christ. Christ is the one who fulfills this promise, not Solomon. Solomon tries, and boy, does he get it wrong. So anyway, that's it for today. We'll see you shortly for day 2, and next week we'll continue to see the prayers that Solomon prays, which kind of show where he's off. Anyway, Christos Anesti, Christ is risen. God bless you all. We'll see you in a few days.